Hi, I am Stephanie Congo, a yoga instructor, positive uplifting coach, and energy medicine practitioner, and I'm here to talk to you this morning about the physical benefits of yoga. So the first thing I would like to say is that yoga just does a body good. If you remember the 1980s commercials for milk, they had these short little 30-second commercials talking about how good milk is for your bones and your skin and your body. And yoga is a very similar thing. So I think it's a great tagline to bring into the yoga, which is, it does a body good. So I've been doing yoga. I started out in Pilates a number of years ago back in college. And then a friend took me to a yoga class, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. I was very physically active, and I was going to power yoga classes. And so that amount of vigorous activity was something that I craved because I wanted to be as fit and strong as I could, and yoga fit that bill. So what I didn't realize was all of the other benefits of yoga that we know about, right? It started releasing my stress every week. It became a place where I could hit the reset button and just wipe away all of the cobwebs, and the next day I was just feeling great. And so when you do something that feels great, you tend to go back to it again and again. And so there formed my path of yoga. I did power yoga for a number of years, maybe 6, 7, or 8 years, and wanted to go deeper into yoga training so I could become a yoga teacher. And so there became my shift. I was actually really reluctant to try other kinds of yoga. I was so stuck in my habit of like the power yoga and the same flow and the deep meditation state that I achieved there. But once I shifted to Vinyasa flow, the doors just opened up, because there are so many other kinds of yoga out there, and there's yoga for everybody. There's slow yoga and fast yoga, therapeutic yoga, restorative yoga. There's yoga where you can even just take a nap and listen to the guided meditation. And so the benefits of physical yoga they're endless. The biggest one, if I haven't mentioned yet, is stress relieving. It just really helps to stretch out the body and create more space within your mind and within your physical cells. So definitely a lot of stretching happens, and a lot of self-acceptance happens as well. The more time you spend on the mat, the more time you start to notice what's happening in your mind, the thought patterns that are recurring, and you can start to really shift the patterns and the openness from the yoga mat into real life. So once you start doing that, you can become a little bit more open, your breathing becomes easier, and you're just moving every time you do yoga. So the more you move with your body, the more you move your mind, and the more you just move life in general to happen and line up more and more in line with you. So it's a great way to balance the system, balance the body, balance the mind, and balance your spirit. So yoga has been a great way to start to calm the body. When we have a lot of stress involved in our lives, it tends to show up in your body, right? You get all tense, you get all angry, and you start like shouting at people and being all irritable, and you might not know why, because you always think it's the other person. The other person's making me angry. That job is just making me very unhappy. But when you start to cultivate that inner knowing and that inner peace, you'll start to see all of the ripples on the lake, they start to smooth out. And therefore, you can start to quiet your mind and really start to live from inside out. So yoga has brought a lot of confidence to my life. It's brought a lot of strength, and it's brought me the ability to keep practicing over and over again. And with the number of teachers and the amount of different modalities out there, it's something that I have found that I can keep growing with over time. So it's not just like, oh, I'll take a couple classes and be good to go. It's really been something that it keeps fulfilling me. And it's not to say like I might take a couple months off because I had an injury, or I have to slowly ease back into it because I took a break. But it's that slow and consistent and persistent practice that has really helped me out over the past almost 20 years. So the other thing that yoga really helps with, during a class, there are a lot of different instructions for keeping the body in safe positions. And so when we move into positions, we are definitely, you're paying attention to your body, right? You're stretching your arm out, you're stretching your fingertips, you're paying attention to the top of your head and sitting up taller, extending your spine, maybe opening your heart, checking in with where your feet are placed on the ground. So you're always it's almost like you're micromanaging your body on your mat. But what that's actually doing is it keeps bringing yourself back to the body, back to being present in the moment. And so every time you practice that, it's kind of like meditation. If, when we meditated to start this morning, and when you meditate, you keep training your brain and training your mind to come back to, maybe it's a mantra, maybe it's your breathing, maybe it's just that inner light and love that you're sensing, that you're sitting in. So yoga is very similar to that. When I started first meditating, I was like, oh, this is brand new, and I love sitting, and I love going to the Shambhala Center when I was living in Vermont. And then I started really realizing like how long I had been doing meditation. And I call yoga a moving meditation, because it is. You are focusing your mind and you're focusing your body, but you're bringing your awareness to this physical shape that we're each holding. So I've talked about the different types of yoga and how there's a type for everybody. I've talked about the physical benefits of yoga. Some of the misconceptions I can talk about, I think a lot of people think, oh, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible, I'm not slender, I can't touch my toes, I can't focus, I can't sit that long. But those are all the reasons why you should do yoga. Because the more you practice standing on one leg for 60 seconds and switching and then doing it again and repeating that every class, the more you start to open your heart and open your throat up to the ceiling, the more flexibility you're going to have in your spine. And so that's definitely a misconception. And a lot of people will you got to start somewhere. So some people will even get private sessions because it's a little bit more personable and they don't feel as intimidated by going to a class. You can also find small groups to go. You can go, if you just like going to the gym, maybe you're more athletic already, there are yoga classes there. And then there are also just smaller groups that are more tuned into certain beginners or certain therapies or certain physical conditions people might have. So as I've gone along this trajectory of starting out in power yoga and vinyasa, I've tried a lot of them at this point in time, and a lot of mantras and a lot of chanting and a lot of meditation. I'm now doing more of a therapeutic style yoga. I still really enjoy teaching more of like a Pilates mix Vinyasa flow. It's really fun to see and teach people how much they can push their bodies and how much they know they can do without actually just seeing their reactions and how great they're feeling after a class. But I'm also teaching more therapeutic style now, and that is more to help people that have more difficult conditions, like a lot of sciatica or traumas, or people that have had concussions or Parkinson's. There's a way to tap into yoga so it's slow and mindful, and I'm able to meet these clients where they're at in their yoga progression. Sometimes people, come every week, and again, it's a practice thing. So the more you practice, the better you get. Right now, I'm dealing with an injury that I had about 6 weeks ago. I was down at the Mississippi River and just sitting on the river and sitting on a log meditating. And when I got up, the ground must have been super sandy and little stones everywhere, because I slipped and I went to catch myself with my right hand, and I literally landed on the tiny little pinky joint. And so it has been 6 weeks of trying to get this pinky to bend again. So you can see, like, I'm trying to bend it, but the other one it can bend a lot better. And so I'm getting like a real time, like another way to practice how to take care of myself. And it's been hard. I have to really talk to this little finger, like, okay, you're gonna make it, you're gonna get better. And I squeeze the putty and I do all my physical therapy exercises now. But it's just amazing how one little injury can just floor you, because I've had to have this hand all wrapped up. I haven't been able to use it. I couldn't bend it. The thing was like stiff as a board, which meant I couldn't do my dishes. I couldn't chop a carrot. I couldn't sweep my floors in my house. So I've had to reach out for help to go through this. But yet it's another way to practice, right? And we can find other ways to practice taking care of ourselves and finding compassion. And one of those ways is through yoga. So by going back to the mat, it's a great place to just practice your self-talk and say, hey, I can do this. I can do this pose. And it's a way to really tap into the mind and see what things you're telling yourself. I remember years ago in yoga that I didn't have good self-talk. It was like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not holding my leg as high as the next person. I can't touch my toes today. I wish I could go bigger and stronger. And some days you just can't do it. You're tired. And looking back, I realize now, like, how bad my talk was, or just how not pleasant it was, and how much nicer I could have been to myself. So now when I go and I take my own yoga classes from the multitude of teachers that I love, I am really paying attention to how my mind is operating. And I'll tell you, it is a lot different from when I started. And it's still a practice. I still have to come back and be like, okay, this thought comes up, but I don't have to listen to it. I can just change it and be like, okay, I'm just gonna rest here today. This is as far as I can go. And it was also really hard when I had my concussion a few years ago to even do yoga, because I couldn't listen to music, which meant basically going to any studio class was out. And what happened was I really just started using my yoga teaching as a way for me to rehabilitate. And so my teaching became really slow, it became really mindful, and that was what I could do, and that was my level. And I just had to accept that whoever showed up to my classes, that's what they also needed in those moments. And so I invite you, if you try yoga or you have other practices that you love, to continue to see how much compassion and love you can have for yourself. Because once you can start to foster and grow that, the easier it will be to share with other people. And so I keep coming back to yoga because it feels good. It does a body good. And I think it gets me to move, and it gets me time to myself. So going to a yoga class, it's like having something on this schedule that means for this hour or this hour and a half, I'm going to take care of myself, because I need that time to just relax or restore or get my heart rate going and my breathing at a higher rate, because I know when I get to Shavasana, when I get to the relaxation part at the end of the class, I know how amazing I'm going to feel. And it's that feeling in Shavasana with all your little cells are just bubbling and full of light. It's like your whole body is just vibrating for 10 minutes. And it feels great. And so I think the goal of yoga is ultimately to be more aware of who you are and start to quiet the body so that you can start to listen to the mind. So at this time, I can open up the floor for questions if anybody has any questions or things they would like to talk about. Is that okay, Twana?
Absolutely.
All right.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for speaking with us, and I'm sorry about your hand.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I know any type of injury, it feels awful. In your bio, you speak about energy medicine.
Yes.
Some of us have probably never heard of that before. Can you give us, explain what that is?
Sure. I can talk about energy medicine. So after doing yoga for about, I guess it was probably around 10 years, the Pilates and yoga, I just became fascinated with what the meridians were and are. And once you put something out there, it'll show up somewhere. And so it happened to be at the yoga studio that I was at. They were having these workshops about energy medicine yoga. And so I met this woman named Lauren Walker, and she is now combining energy medicine with yoga. So that was my introduction to the meridians and all of these energy systems. So we often know the meridians as the 14 rivers of energy that move through the body that the acupuncturists use. So in this particular healing modality, it's founded by Donna Eden that I work with. And we work with the auric field, so that bubble of light around you. There's all these energies that weave in your auric field to help you get stronger. And we also work with the electrical system, with the Celtic weave, with the grounding of the body. We work with the 7 chakras to get them clear and centered. And so any energy medicine modality, the goal is to work on shifting some of the traumas that have come into your system and shifting some of the mindsets. When I've worked with shamanic people and shamanic trainings, both here in the States and down in Guatemala and Peru, we are always working with how to shift your perception. And so energy medicine is just all about that. It's getting more clear and more centered and tapping into other ways to really calm and reset the nervous system. And so that's what a lot of what we're doing now is trying to calm the body down, because when the nervous system is calm, then the body can start to remember what it feels like to heal naturally.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I have a couple of questions actually from the chat box, so I'm going to read them for you.
Great.
So Veronica says hot yoga, Bikram. Am I saying it correct?
Yeah, Bikram.
Very popular, but she didn't like it. So what type of class would you recommend for beginners?
Well, they just call it beginner's yoga. So for some reason, I didn't know beginner yoga existed. My friend just took me to a Bikram class, and I was, pretty physically fit being in my early 20s. So I was able to jump into a class, but that's not always the case for everybody. So I would definitely try to find just a beginner's yoga class or a beginner's yoga series. Oftentimes it might be 6 weeks. So that way you can go through and learn all the beginner poses and then really get your confidence up. So after you go through about 6 weeks, it's easier to go into just a regular studio class.
Okay, I have another one from the chat.
Yeah.
From Jennifer, she asked, what is an auric field? And can you please describe the different types of yoga? The Bikram versus, I say it wrong.
It's
Stephanie,
fine.
You don't have to. But so she wants you to also describe the different types of yoga.
Okay. So we'll start with what the auric field is. So you might have heard people talk about your space suit or the space, like the bubble around you. Or you might have seen, let's see. So when you draw a picture of the body, there's a field that comes out all around it. And so this is the field that really holds ourselves together. There is an outside, I wish I could draw a picture. I'm very visual, but there's an outside ring all around. So just picture your body sitting in an egg, and you are in this protective bubble. And so in that bubble, you have all of these energies, and there's a lot of like figure 8 patterns to help keep your weave strong together. And so when this bubble gets hurt or disruptured, it'll start not looking like an egg. So it might start to shift, right? So ideally the bubble would be equally on all sides of your body, but when it starts to shift, that's when you're not feeling centered. You're not feeling grounded, and you're feeling all weird. And when you have injuries, like say my finger, something came into my field and damaged the field here. So, this is why I also work in the field on my hand, because I'm weaving the figure 8s around, so the disturbance that has come into my field, I can start to heal the holes and the tears in the field, and that will also help my finger get better faster. And so that subject we also talk about more in some of my energy medicine classes. So hopefully that's just a little snippet. But your auric field protects you from the outside elements. It can also, it acts like this screen door to your front door. So you can either, when you have just a screen door, the air and the breeze can come easily in and out. And that's the same as with your energy body. You can easily bring in energy. I can easily listen to you. I can send out energy. I can receive it back. And so when that's clearly moving, like the screen door is keeping, but it's also keeping all of the bugs outside, because I don't want any mosquitoes or things I don't want in my field. So it's a layer of protection. And so there's different ways that we work with that to strengthen the field. And the other piece I'll add to that too is that when people are sick or they're I guess I'd mentioned injured, but if you're sick, your auric field will start to collapse and it will start to get really close to you. And you can tell people that have collapsed auras because they're hunched over, they're not feeling very well, they're pretty they're just very reclusive. And so when your auric field when you're sitting up tall and your heart is open, your auric field is stronger because it's emanating out from you. So then you have a nice strong auric field. So that's one way you can tell just by looking at people sometimes how their auric field is. So the question about the different types of yoga, there are hundreds of kinds of yoga and there are thousands of different yoga teachers. And sometimes for me, I actually will go to a yoga teacher that I like. Because I know enough about yoga, I can sort of adapt a class to myself at this point. So I really look for a teacher that can hold space for me. Somebody that can let me listen to my own body and let me do my own thing, but they can also hold the space for healing to happen or for, unique poses and flows to happen. So I would say that's very important when looking for a yoga class. Make sure there's somebody that you connect with. And you might not connect with them the first or second time, but if you have an inkling of I think I still want to check out this person a couple more times, you'll be surprised at how you might start liking their class after a few times. And the different kinds of yoga, well, I'll start with, I guess, my path, just because that's an easy enough thing to explain. So Pilates, I like to add Pilates into the yoga because it's a very similar mat class. And yeah.
Stephanie, I'm sorry to interrupt. You sound very staticky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
there you go. You sound good.
Great. So Pilates is more core based and it's more working on the abs and strengthening the whole torso. It's not to say we don't do a lot of little micro movements to strengthen the legs as well. Bikram yoga is it's 26 poses repeated. Every pose you do twice, and it's very hot. So it's about 105 degrees. And you repeat the same 26 poses twice, and so it's an hour and a half class. And it's a pretty intensive class. You also have Vinyasa, which is more of a flow class. So it's more sun salutations, where you're standing up tall, you're going down to the ground, doing some push-ups, upward dogs, and downward dogs. So that can tend to be, for me, some people will do Vinyasa Ashtanga yoga for forever. There's people doing it for 50, 60 years now. For me personally, having just gone through the growth that I have, I love Ashtanga and I love Vinyasa, but at some point, being an energy worker, your wrists can get a little bit tired from all of the up and down. And so I just err on the little bit of side of caution of just noticing how strong I am to be able to do all of that extra hand work and the push-ups. Massage therapists in particular have to be very cautious with that. And so, and that particular yoga, Ashtanga, was developed really for 12-year-old boys in India. And there are a lot of people that think that they need to be, they need to be good enough to be able to do that whole series 1, 2, 3. And again, that's good for some bodies, but not all bodies. So Ashtanga is also very flowy, and Vinyasa is very similar to that. Restorative yoga is more when you have bolsters and pillows, and you lay them on your mat in different positions, and you just drape your body over them. So you might have one over your side and let your head down. And you might hold that position for 5 or 10 minutes. And it's really nice to just relax the body so that the nervous system can come back to balance. And the other one I'll mention is yin. Yin yoga is more working on the lower part of the body, where you're doing deeper poses for 3 to 5 minutes. And again, if you're a runner, if you are more athletic, yin yoga tends to be more of like the yoga for sports people, because you need that counterbalance with all of the extra exercise that you do. So doing yin, which is more of the deep stretching, can be really good for that. All right, I hope that answers your question.
All right. Well, it's going to end soon, our time together. I have one question left in the chat. If you could give us a kind of a quick answer from Linda. What is the meditation yoga called? You referred to it at the beginning of your talk.
The meditation type yoga is called Yoga Nidra. And really the founder, the grandfather of Yoga Nidra was Richard Miller back years ago. And so he has put together a wonderful Yoga Nidra program. And since then, there's been a lot of other teachers that have come through and made that a wonderful addition to the yoga here in the yoga tradition. Well, I think that is the last question. And so I thank you all for coming today to listen to me talk about the benefits of physical health for yoga. I'm really glad you tuned in. I had a wonderful time talking about this. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at stephanielovesyoga@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Stephanie Loves Yoga. Please call me or email me if you have any questions, or if you'd like to set up a couple of sessions and try it out. Thank you for coming again, and thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.